at the Fully Charged Live Show in Sydney 2024. And I got to talk with a really lovely and intelligent lady, Rosie Barnes, who's engineering with Rosie on YouTube. Here's the interview. Well, I'm really honoured to be here with Rosie Barnes, who is engineering with Rosie on YouTube. And she's been here doing some sessions yesterday, and she's agreed to come and have a chat. Now, Rosie is a very intellectual person. She's got a PhD in something to do with mechanical engineering. She'll explain that perhaps.
Yeah, sure. So it is broadly within mechanical engineering, and it's on composite material structural design, and it was a wind turbine blade project.
Yeah, so you actually now run a small consultancy company going to governments and companies on...
Not so much governments, although I wouldn't mind, but anybody that's either developing a clean energy technology or is thinking of investing in a clean energy technology or buying one, help with the development process. So, a lot of it is helping investors who have, got a pitch deck from a company that they're thinking of getting involved with, and, startups love to make a lot of bold claims, and so I go through and assess their claims and tell the investor what kind of evidence I would want to see to back up those claims. And then another thing that is commonly the technique that's used to make a company sound more appealing is misrepresenting the competition, maybe.
Sounds like politicians and the press.
Yeah, I think, you've got to definitely be aware, not take things at face value. But with the energy transition, it's hard. It's not necessarily a matter of purposely doing it, but not realizing, because competitors change, everyone now has a battery in their EV and they can use that to power their home. So would you have ever thought that a utility provider would be in competition with a car manufacturer?
Unless it's a Tesla at the moment.
No, not yet. But so you can see how things can change. So you need somebody that's kind of got the broad overview of all technologies, and not just where they are today, but where they're going to be. Because it's
and this renewable, it's the in thing at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting space there's a lot of people that want to put money into clean technologies, but that don't have that engineering background. And so, the reason why I wanted to get into this was because you just see so much money going to companies that they were just never going to, there's no possible way that they could have ever succeeded. It's not like with an engineering technology, hardware, it's not a matter of faking it till you make it. If the engineering isn't going to work, then it's never going to work. It doesn't matter if you've got a good marketing plan or a great, sort of...
So it's not just a matter of sticking solar panels on the roof and some batteries out the back.
Well,
it starts. That's what I've done at my home.
That's a really big chunk of it, yeah. But no, so I'm not working with those kind of mature technology as much. I'm working with the more emerging ones. So lots of long duration energy storage. I still do a lot of wind because that's my background. And new technologies that are being developed, a lot on industrial emissions as well. It's a really interesting space. How can you get emissions out of steel and cement and aluminium, all those sorts of things, chemicals, yeah.
Yes, that's a big polluter, isn't it, the steel industry?
Yeah.
Because they burn a lot of coal.
Yeah, well, they use the coal. It's not just a matter of burning the coal to get the heat. That's part of it, but also the coal is actually going into the iron ore to take the oxygen atoms away, and you react the carbon and coal with oxygen in iron ore, and you get CO2.
Carbon dioxide, yes.
Yeah, same with lime. There's a reaction where, so when you're making cement or anything that uses lime, you turn limestone into lime, and half of the limestone goes up into the atmosphere as CO2.
It's a worry. Now, wind turbines was your thing. Mm-hmm. I noticed you did a video just recently on recycling wind turbine blades, or not.
Yeah. Well, so that's probably my first love with renewable energy, partly because I really just like composite materials, and I studied aerodynamics in my bachelor degree. So you combine aerodynamics, composite materials, and renewable energy, and then you're left with wind energy. But I also I went back to uni after I'd been working for 6 years after my bachelor's degree, and then I went back to university to get a PhD because I had been working for a lot of startups, and so was working within renewables, but on early stage stuff that wasn't actually generating any electricity. And at that time, renewables were a lot more expensive than fossil fuels. And I could see wind energy was getting close to being cheap enough to displace a lot of power generation without having to convince anybody that it's the right thing to do. Like once it's cheaper, you avoid. I get so sick of having to convince people that they should save the environment.
Wind and solar are now some of the cheapest on a levelised cost of energy basis than anything now. So it makes sense to be going in that direction. You said something interesting yesterday in one of your sessions about you only need 0.1% of Australia covered with solar panels to produce enough energy, or 1% with wind turbines. I think that was the figures.
The wind calculation is a bit harder because it depends on the capacity factor, what size turbine, how, it's complicated, but it's about 1%. So it's not like you need 0.1% of Australia for solar and 1% for wind. It's either or a mix somewhere in between.
0.1% we can probably do with rooftop solar just about, couldn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's been times recently when, and definitely in South Australia, they frequently get periods of the day where rooftop solar is providing 100% of the electricity. And even across the NEM, the eastern electricity grid of Australia, we're getting periods where
unless you're in
rooftop solar
Queensland when they're burning coal anyway.
No, but I mean, Queensland has a lot of rooftop solar because it's just economically sensible for people to put it in.
They've just hit, was it 1 million rooftops with solar on or something?
I didn't see that record.
I heard it yesterday. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
But I think Queensland is one of the most exciting. Looking through the next 5 or 10 years, the action in Queensland is going to be some of the most important to all of Australia because, especially the wind that they're putting in, because the wind across the rest of Australia is fairly correlated. Like if it's windy in South Australia, it's probably also windy in Victoria. So when it's not windy in those places, it's not windy anywhere. But Queensland isn't correlated like that. So it's really often the case that when you're lacking in wind everywhere, it's actually still windy in Queensland. So you put in a lot of wind farms in Queensland and then you need a lot less energy storage to make up for,
So I'm in
else.
Western Australia.
Right.
And that seems to be completely disconnected from the rest of the country in more ways than one. And we've got several wind farms. The government has been putting in wind farms to power desalination plants. But I don't know that they're putting in enough yet because some people have been going, it's visual pollution. They use that word pollution.
I mean, I think that's one of the things I try and talk about in my channel is like getting realistic about trade-offs because there is no technology or no physical thing that doesn't have any impact. Like, I mean, I would rather that we didn't need wind turbines anywhere and we could just have, look at nature all the time, but I'd also rather I didn't have to look at a power line or a building or a road. You accept that if we want to live the lifestyle that we do, there's an impact and you need to compare it to what you would be doing instead. It's not a matter of having a wind turbine or no wind turbine. It's a matter of having a wind turbine or a coal power plant.
Coal-fired power station.
Which also don't look very nice. And, they put invisible pollution into the air, which kills, millions of people die around the world each year from that. So, that's the anti-climate change people. It's like, they have a point. Like, I don't have any problem with looking at wind turbines, but I would still rather look at a tree. But that's not a grown-up choice, you don't get to just pretend that we don't need energy.
A friend of mine said to me a week or so ago, "Rubbing solar panels, they're covering up all the farms." And I go, yeah, but you've got something called agrivoltaics. And they're looking now to putting in vertical, dual-faced solar panels that actually seem to do better. And then you've got the sheep grazing in between and getting better quality wool and so on.
I mean, we're not short on land in Australia, and a solar panel doesn't need to go over like your prime agricultural land, and it shouldn't if it's certain crops that like you would use all of the land that you had available for that. But most of Australia's agricultural land is like really sparse grazing, and you could definitely put some solar panels in there. And I mean, it's the same with wind farms. They go on a farm and you can share, seeing great pictures of wind turbines in Australia, and then all the sheep in the paddock are huddled in the shadow of the tower and the blades because it's it's nicer for them to get out of the heat.
There's a lot of solar panels going up on farms that are shading the plants or the food crops underneath that prefer the shade. And you can grow those better in Australia with solar panels on top, and you get dual use of the land.
Yeah. I mean, we're so far from running out of land in Australia that it's not. I don't even barely want to talk about it as an issue, but you can also get like translucent solar panels if you were truly running out of land.
I think it's, we've got vast quantities of desert open land in the middle of Australia, but it's far, so you've got to transport that power with cables to where the population needs it.
Yeah, sometimes that makes sense. Like there's a big wind and solar farm and battery up in South Australia called Goida, I think. And it's right near there's a new energy connector, a big new transmission line that's going from South Australia to New South Wales, and that's one area where the potential is so good that it makes sense to build it out, even though it's not close to anybody, and then put the transmission in.
Well, they're doing that in the Northern Territory. They're sending it to Singapore, or are planning on sending it to Singapore, using these ultra high voltage DC power lines.
The Sun Cable project.
Yes,
I've been watching that with interest.
We need it here. Why can't he send it here? Mike Cannon-Brooks, please.
No, I don't think we do. I think that's because people ask me that, why don't you send it to Australia, to the rest of Australia and use it in Australia? I mean, they are going to use it in Darwin, so where there is a need, they'll put it in there. But there's thousands of other places you could put a giant solar farm in that would be much closer and cheaper to connect to. So it doesn't make sense for it to come all the way over here. The same way, like you would never connect Western Australia to the rest of the Australian grid because it's just too expensive to do it that way compared to building
local things.
So
are we doing enough in the wind and solar field to get that transition?
I mean, we're doing enough that it will get there eventually.
Sooner?
We could be getting there sooner. I mean, it's never soon enough, right? I mean, soon enough would be that we didn't have any, not last year, but like 20 years ago. But it would have been nice if we didn't have any impacts from climate change at all. But without trying that hard, we'll get to 80% renewables by 2030 in the electricity grid, which is a lot better than most of the world, and it's because we're so blessed with wind and sun here that it's happened despite really poor political action until recently. But if we wanted to speed it up, then I think it's a lot of like really mundane, not exciting things that need to be done. You need to, get more local manufacturing of stuff, and so that you can secure your supply chains and not be, shocked by international events and all things like that. Getting, I don't know, if you want offshore wind, then you need to invest in port infrastructure. And
so many offshore wind projects that just haven't got going.
In Australia,
around Australia, they're proposed.
We're just at the start, so that's all there is to that. I don't think that anything has been abandoned. Or at least I haven't seen it. There was an issue with Star of the South is the first one we'll probably get in Australia, and they had an issue with the location they'd chosen for their port. The environmental assessment found that it wasn't suitable, but I mean, they'll find another location that is suitable is my expectation, and keep on going. So I mean, it's chugging along, but the thing about offshore wind in Australia is that the reason why we're behind in offshore wind is because our onshore wind potential is just so vast, and when it kind of
and it's probably cheaper to do it.
It's a lot cheaper. It's about half the price usually. There's some big advantages of offshore wind that can make it worthwhile to spend more to get access to that resource. But while we've still got so much space left for great onshore wind farms, we don't need to do
somewhere like Britain, which doesn't have a lot of land, has got massive offshore wind farms. Because it probably needs that.
It does.
Whereas here,
solar potential is terrible in the UK as well, and they don't even have that much hydro. So.
I was born in the UK, so I know about the lack of solar. So you said earlier about storage. Now, I mean, we've got big batteries going in around Australia, and not far from where I am, they're putting in large batteries. But apart from just putting in the lithium batteries, there are other forms of long-term storage that you're...
So there's a few pumped hydro projects in Australia. There's a Snowy Hydro 2.0, which is huge, but I don't know if you're following it, but it's just got problem after problem. They've got to dig this really long tunnel, and digging tunnels is just a pain. Australia is not experienced at digging a lot of tunnels.
You need to phone Elon Musk and get the boring company over.
Yeah, I guess, but so they've had a lot of problems with the tunnel boring machines getting stuck and being surprised at the conditions underground. So that's years behind schedule and a long way over budget. And I'm pretty sure that the budget will increase some more. Like when they announced it, it sounded like pretty good value for money. Now the cost has crept up. It no longer really sounds like that, and I'm sure by the time that it's finished, you'll be like, "Why did we do this?" But it's happening. But then there's also a Kidston project, which is taking an abandoned mine and turning that into some off-river pumped hydro. And so that will be, I think, I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but it's a couple of records broken. And first, it's the first hydro project that will be completed in Australia since in 40 years or something. And secondly, it is, other than the pumped hydro that we have in the Stone Mountain scheme, it will be the biggest battery that we have in Australia, I think, or maybe it's the second or third. And then the other thing that's really interesting about that one is that it's not a government project. It's a merchant project. So private money has said, we want to do this project, and it's actually going to be completed probably within a reasonable time frame within the next couple of years. And then other energy storage that's coming up. There's an interesting compressed air energy storage system that they're putting in Broken Hill, and they're doing that as an alternative to upgrading the transmission link to Broken Hill, which is, they need more. Their energy security is not very good at the moment, and they need to upgrade the transmission, but instead of doing that, they found if they can implement some storage locally, then that can buffer it enough to be able to not need to increase the capacity of that transmission. So that's a really interesting way to use storage because transmission upgrades are challenging to achieve.
There are many technologies for long-term storage, heated sand, compressed air, pumped hydro. I mean, have we got any others that are sort of coming to fruition in Australia?
Flow Batteries as a company in Brisbane called Redflow, who I visited.
I've heard of them.
Visited them, so they've got some. They're scaling up both in Australia but also in California. There's another Australian company. I've got to remember the name. MGA Thermal. So the MGA stands for Miscibility Gap Alloy. It's the type of technology that they have in these big thermal bricks. It's like a chocolate chip muffin where they've, if you imagine that the chocolate chips are chunks of aluminium, and then they heat up and store a lot of energy, and when they heat up and turn liquid, but because they're then within the muffin or within the rest of the brick, it stays solid. So it's easier to handle than big vats of molten metal. So they can do stuff like convert an old coal power plant. They could convert that into energy storage using their thermal bricks.
That would be an excellent use for all coal-fired power stations in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Convert them into batteries or storage systems.
Yeah, although I will say that there is no shortage of people that have a technology that they want to convert. There's no an abandoned coal power station has a lot going for it as an attractive site because they have the transmission already there, and there's a lot of reasons.
And we need the storage because wind and sun don't blow and shine all day long.
But in Australia, it is very close to being all day long. I mean, obviously the sun sets every night, but people worry about what happens when there's no sun and no wind for 3 weeks in a row, and that just simply does not happen in Australia.
No.
They did. I think it was CSIRO or some other science organisation did a really big comprehensive study on weather conditions across all the east of Australia, and found that it's really rare that you would get something like a low wind and sun across that whole big geographic area that's connected with the grid. And when it is, it's 3 days is about the max that you need to plan for.
I live in Western Australia, just outside of Perth, and I mean, I've got solar panels. Now, during the summer, I make 41 kilowatts during the sunny period. But in winter, I'm still producing, and I can produce 10 kilowatts, which is a reasonable amount.
Yeah, so we've got a totally different system here than in the UK, where you like basically can't count on solar power at all in the winter. In Australia, you still can. So if you size everything, and solar is so cheap now, and we have so much land, despite what some politicians might say, you can size your solar system for winter, and then just have you have surplus in the summer. You can choose to find something to do with it, or just not use it. It doesn't really matter, but you can actually end up with like a system that doesn't need much storage. Whereas if you sized for your summer, then you would need you need to build an extension on your house to put in a battery big enough to help you through the winter. So,
well, hopefully we'll be all heading in the right direction. Certainly Australia's got the natural resources to do it, and fingers crossed for the future.
Yeah.
So, look, Rosie, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
Yeah.
As I said, I like watching your videos, and that's where I first learnt the difference between Vort and Hort, the vertical axis wind turbines and the horizontal. What's she talking about? Oh, right, that way, okay.
That is the surprise hit. That's actually the video that really turned my channel from something tiny into something bigger. Yeah, and it's still...
Yeah, I was already watching the videos, but then that one I'm going... Right, okay, I never thought of it. So.
Yeah, it was a total surprise to me that anybody, because it's such a niche thing, like vertical axis wind turbines. I'd worked in the industry, for a decade at that point, and it's just like a little gimmick for if you want to make big amounts of, like energy that's going to displace fossil fuels, then it's just horizontal axis all the way. I never even thought of vertical. But then I can't even remember why I made that video, just because it's it's interesting. The engineering is interesting of them. I just found out that a lot of people just love that technology.
Yeah, I would love to get a wind turbine on my house.
Yeah,
but there just isn't.
It doesn't really make sense
at the moment. They don't produce very much. And
no, they don't. I have a video on that as well, comparing rooftop solar to rooftop wind and laying out why it's never really going to make much sense to put rooftop
at the
wind.
moment. Maybe when they get a bit more efficient and a little puff of wind makes kilowatts.
But it can't. It's just, there's a certain amount of energy in a little puff of wind, and it's not very much. Yeah. Sorry, it's never going to be a thing.
It gets quite windy where I live.
But if you've got some land, then you could put a small wind turbine near your house, and that would do something.
No, I haven't. I've got a standard block with a standard house and my solar panels and batteries at home, and that's it.
I'd suggest buying shares on like a community wind farm or something. That's how you'll get some. That would be the way to get in on the action for the wind.
Look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I
know you've been busy here yesterday because you were running several sessions, and to be able to get you here, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Rosie very much. She was an absolute delight, and she agreed to sit down with me for a nice 15 minutes and have a chat. So I hope you enjoyed that. She's very, very good at what she does. Don't forget, can you click that like and subscribe button below? Thank you very much. It really does help. And I'll see you all very soon.